are these people?
I did a story Monday night about where I wrote one about housing in South Florida and how many $1 million houses plus there were available on the market. Well, I did a little further research and I did a little bit further search about this to kind of see as a follow-up. And I find this guy, Nick Gurley. Now, Nick Gurley has a website. So this is a little bit biased. He's got a site called Reventure. And he'll explain what Reventure does in a minute. He says, I don't think that people understand what's happening in housing right now in Florida, which has 177,000 listings, which is the highest level on record. More listings ever in the state of Florida than ever. The entire Northeast U.S. has 79,000 listings, which is the lowest level on record. That's a statistic I did not know. People are leaving Florida and moving back north. A structural trend that will likely last years and cause Florida's housing market to decline for an extended period. So go ahead. Did
he miss a zero in there?
He did. But that's okay.
He must have.
We got it.
Okay.
He might have had to do that for. Yeah. And again, this is an analysis from his consulting company. So there may be some bias in there, but he's pulling out the housing supply, right, for these states. And assuming that he's correct, right, and I didn't do his math, but that is a graph. That's a substantial graph to show, again, that they're back in 2018 or so, there were 155,000 houses for sale in Florida. This is 20% more than that. All right. Now, what he says is that the entire housing market got this wrong. Builders, investors, and second and third home buyers flocked to Florida during pandemic thinking it was a stable place to invest and safe. Where they actually should have been buying and building was in the Northeast. Now Florida's housing market is in a housing downturn. Prices are dropping across the state and will likely continue to drop for years due to an oversupply of housing combined with a record lack of affordability. That was what I had talked about, was the glut on how expensive the houses were. Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice, home prices in the Northeast are going up and continue to go up due to a shortage of housing. For example, in New York, values are up almost 6% over the last year. Meanwhile, Florida's down 2.4%. Wow.
The rent is too damn high.
But this is just the start of declines in Florida, according to Nick, and this is his prediction, because inventory growth is showing no signs of slowing, and the structural reversal in migration will take years to normalize. And he references, all right, that Florida's migration levels are down 80% from their pandemic peak when people were moving to Florida. In 2024, the state registered 64,000 net domestic migration, which was fifth worst level on record, by the way, last year. Look at where it was 3 years prior, right? It was over 250,000. All right, he says the last time something like this happened, it was the 2008 housing bust, and Florida went through a 5-year period of reduced migration. I have a buddy that bought his house during that period in Port St. Lucie, and 10 years later still sold it for a loss. All right, he says, I think this is just a big part of the story that people don't understand yet about Florida's housing market. Everyone is blaming HOA fees, hurricanes, and insurance, and many think it's just a blip that will soon subside. But the true reality could be that Florida is now entering the down cycle of inbound migration, and that down cycle is going to last for years. So don't buy in Florida right now because the prices are going to keep going down, is what he's saying, because the data on his app shows that local home buyers in Florida now need to pay 39% of their gross income on the mortgage and tax costs for buying a house, which is the highest level since 2006-07. Remember where I talked about that you need to have 25 to 30% of your income to get approved for a mortgage? Now they're allowing up to 40% because they can't get approved at 25 to 30. But what ends up happening, he says the highest level since the 2006-07 number, that 39%, that bubble happened when they were allowing mortgages to go out for people that couldn't really afford them because it would be 40% of their gross income, not even net. 39% of their gross income was going to housing. All right. And way above the long-term average of 20. Well, but that's 39% versus the long-term average of 27.
Yeah.
All right. So about a third, like I said, about a third of your income, 25 to 30% of your income. That's right in the range. All right. So that's indicating right now that they're accepting mortgages from people that can't really afford it, which is going to see a super high default rate down the road, which is going to see an even further crash of the market. So if the local buyers are priced out and the migration train is slowed, who's going to support the Florida housing market? The answer, nobody.
Israel.
Who are these people?
That's what I'm asking. Who are these people? No one. That I asked that in my article. Who's buying all these $1 million houses? The answer is nobody. Which is why inventory's through the roof and prices are dropping fast. Not a surprise. Golden Monarch, Florida has fake money. Very funny. Well, some of it's fake money, sure. Reventure is forecasting prices to drop in Florida by about 5% over the next 12 months. Our price forecast score for the state is a 35. Meanwhile, New York is a 55, which equates to a 4.3% increase in housing prices. All right, so very interesting stuff.
Free real estate.
He's doing it to promote his reventure.app, service. And I just mentioned that there were over 2,000 homes for sale of $1 million or more. Who can afford these? I published this last week. Okay, just to kind of pile on to Nick's article. So I thought that was really interesting and a good follow-up to what we had talked about with South Florida housing. I don't know what you're seeing in Northern Florida, Reef, about housing and stuff going on the market. Are you seeing a lot of like for sale signs in your neighborhood and stuff lately?
I mean, not here specifically, but there was definitely a big boom with like housing communities not too far from me that we tried to get into that like wasn't, the numbers just didn't math. The math didn't math, Like you could make all these houses, no one was going to pay them. So,
right.
So what's the point of that?
Support independent media, and you can do that there. Cash App, Ko-fi, PayPal, or INN newsletter. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I love you all. Have a good night, everyone.
Keep listening to what Little Boats have to tell you. See you in a bit, fam.
Bye, Felicia.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
Can keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 died? And now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison.